All right, folks, welcome to another live Q&A for Airplane. Get my computer ready here. We will be starting in a second. I see some people in the chat. I see Marty, who I met at Sun and Fun. Thanks for joining us over there. Let's see. Somebody has a question. Ronnie the pilot is here. Nick Rich is here. We're going to wait for more people to join us, and then we'll be starting answering some questions. I see Tamez is here, and then Ronnie. I guess we'll get started with Ronnie's question, and we'll go from here. But Ronnie's asking questions about. We'll be asking questions about mock oral for PPL. I'm actually glad that you mentioned that because we just finished recording a cool addition to our check ride course. We have a check ride course where we talk to a DPE, and he told us all the things that he sees wrong every once in a while during check rides. So what we did is we actually created a really cool scenario-based training where we hired 3 students, and they came into the studio, and then they recorded a whole bunch of different answers to some of the questions you might hear during a check ride. So we did somewhat of a mock check ride format. Some of the questions are right. A lot of the questions are wrong. All the wrong questions are things that have been told to the DPE. So we know that they're real wrong answers. And we're going to let you decide which one you think is the best. And sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not so obvious. We're finishing editing right now, that course. It should be live, I think, early next week. We're going to be adding it to the check ride course. So if you already have the check ride course, you'll be able to see all that information in there. And it's going to be, it's exciting. I'm excited because the format is going to be very involved. You'll be able to listen to the answers and then pick the right one. And then I'll come back and I'll tell you which one was the right answer and why. And then we'll move on to the next question. So it's going to be very much like if you were sitting in front of the DPE, you'll have the ability to pause and stop and then answer the question yourself and then kind of, compare it to the correct answer at the end of it. So again, I'm pretty excited about this, and we'll be publishing that very soon. So if you have questions, the format of this video is for me to answer any questions you have about things that may not be clear, about topics that you've seen in the news maybe, that you have questions about. Whatever it is, whatever you want to ask, I'm here for the next 30 to 45 minutes answering questions. Today's my wife's birthday, so I have to get home on time. But otherwise, we'll be answering. It's 4 o'clock here in Arizona, and we'll just be going and going over all your questions. So I see Alfred is here. He says, I'm doing the PPL course right now. We have Ish that says hello. We have Alfred. Hi, Greg. And awesome. So send your questions away. We just came back actually from a trade show. This was a drone trade show that we did in Colorado. We went to Denver all of last week, talked to a lot of people about drones, which is another certification that we do on the platform at Pilot Institute. We're getting ready to start talking about Oshkosh, which has been renamed AirVenture. Thank you, Ethan. AirVenture. I always called it Oshkosh. I think people that have been there a couple times call it Oshkosh. That's where it's located. It's named AirVenture, put on by EAA, which is the largest general aviation air show in the world. We're going to be there in July. We're really excited. Bringing the whole team. We're going to be bringing our airplane. We just bought an airplane. We bought a DA-40. We got it a couple weeks ago. It's going to the paint shop. We're getting a cool paint job on it. It's going to be leaving on Monday, so we'll be doing some content this week. Then we'll be doing a full introduction to the airplane when it comes back from the paint shop. We have to fly it in California. We're really excited. We're going to be able to do more content for you from the airplane, which is important to us. We've been using the simulator to do a lot of the content. We've been renting airplanes to do a lot of the content, but now we have our own plane. So look for more of that coming to the channel. We also have more videos we've been working on that are going to be published on the channel as well. We have more courses that are coming up on the airplane side of things. We've been working on a maneuvers course. I know a lot of you have been asking for this, how to do certain maneuvers, which is going to be in addition to the private pilot course. So we'll be helping you with that. And then also we have a radio communication course that's going to be coming up. I know a lot of you struggle with radios. I did when I was a student. So we are putting something together that's going to help you. It's going to be more than just watching videos. There will be some interactive content as well. And so I'm pumped. I think this year we have a ton of great content coming up. So Isam is here, and then we have Edwin saying hi from Puerto Rico. Awesome. Somebody asked, he said, after passing my private pilot written exam, how long is it good for? So Caleb, your written exam is good for 2 years. So you have to make sure that you take your check ride with the FAA within 2 years. It should be plenty of time, but you never know. So make sure you put that in your calendar somewhere. Otherwise, you're going to have to redo the written exam, which means you're going to have to restudy. Sometimes it's not a bad thing right before you check ride, but sometimes you don't want the added stress of having to do something else. So make sure that you take a look at that date on here. Somebody says, happy birthday to your wife. She's going to be excited about that. I'm wondering if the age to retire from flying will be raised. Do people continue to fly privately after retiring? Can anyone learn to fly in their 50s? So Kim, yes, you can absolutely learn to fly in your 50s. We have students in our system that are in their 80s. I know it's amazing. A lot of them say they want to keep their brain active, and so they just continue learning, and then some of them even go into the flying. So I've had students in their 70s when I was a flight instructor. They did great. So I think it's all a matter of whether or not physically you're still there. 50s is definitely not too late, okay? I'm in my 40s now. I'm going to say in 10 years, I'll be still ready to learn and continue flying. Airline pilots have a limit of 65 years old, and the FAA used to have it at 60, and they kind of pushed it to 65. I don't foresee a change to more than that. I know there's been talks about it because of the pilot shortage. I'm not really in favor of doing this. The reason I'm not in favor of it is nothing against 66-year-old and 67-year-olds, but mostly I'm not in favor of it because the FAA did this back in the days because we were talking about a pilot shortage. So instead of fixing the issue, the FAA decided to kick the can down the road by 5 years by increasing the retirement age to 65. And it really did nothing for the pilot shortage other than delay it by 5 years. The reason we're talking about this pilot shortage and this retirement age is that we have a lot of people, baby boomers, that are getting to the edge of retirement now, and they're going to be leaving the workforce. And I think a lot of airlines are asking for them to stay a little bit longer so they can have them working a little bit longer. And instead of putting efforts into figuring out why we don't have more people in the pipeline. That's a personal opinion. I've been seeing this for a long time. I've been in flight training for 20 years, and I've been seeing the trend of this pilot shortage, and I don't think we're tackling the right reason why it's happening. So I hope we can do that. Isam is saying, how can I get a new endorsement for the written? My test has expired since it's been more than 2 years. So Isam, if you are in our private pilot course, we can give you the endorsement. You'll just need to complete 2 written exams, 2 practice exams over 80%, and then we'll be able to send that to you. If you're not, I would recommend that you talk to maybe your flight instructor, and maybe they can sign you off for the written and then go and take it. I would also say if you took the written exam a while back, 2 years ago, your endorsement may still be valid. Unless there was an expiration on the endorsement, it should still be valid. So look at that and see if you can take it again. I would say keep studying. If you haven't, make sure you take a ground school and keep learning, and then take your exam again. Marty says, get my private pilot at 66. I remember Marty going through the course. He went through our 107 and then went through the private pilot. So see, it's possible. He says, in my experience, I know that one topic that comes up for new private pilot is, how do I buy my own airplane? Have you ever considered adding a airplane ownership primer at some point? Yes, we're actually working on a video because we just went through that process, and it's It's lengthy. It can be complicated. You have to do certain things to make sure that you're getting the right aircraft. You have to make sure you do a pre-buy inspection. So we did this. We obviously went all over the internet to find the right aircraft we wanted. I think that's kind of step number one. You have to find what aircraft you want to buy, and there's a lot of options out there: Cessna 172, the Piper, the Diamond, the Cirrus, the whatever brand you want to do. So from here, look for financing, I would say. See if you're going to pay for it, upright, or if you're going to need help from someone, because you're going to need to be qualified. If you've ever bought a house, think about the same process. You're going to need to get, pre-qualified would be good. That way, when you show up, you say, okay, I've been pre-qualified for this amount. Then you know what you can afford, what you cannot afford. I would say be careful, just like every bank out there that is going to give you a loan. Sometimes they think you qualify for a certain amount when maybe it's outside of your means. So this is more of a personal thing, but think about that. And then from here, you're going to want to find the right aircraft in the right location. You're going to want to see it. You're going to want to fly it. You're going to have to put some money down before you can fly it. You also want to talk to insurance companies. That's something that a lot of people forget. Can you qualify for insurance? Do you have enough experience? And if you don't, who's going to be on the insurance with you that has enough experience so that your premium is not too crazy? And then you got to think about a pre-buy inspection. So a pre-buy inspection is when you send it to a shop. They look at the aircraft. They look at a bunch of different things. And then they give you a report. And then based on that, you can make a decision as to whether or not you want to buy the aircraft. So there's a lot of things that need to be done in order to buy an aircraft. And then paperwork. Typically, if you deal with an aircraft broker, they will do the paperwork for you. Make sure you understand how the money is going to be exchanging hands. If you're doing this through a third party or a private party, make sure that your money is in escrow somewhere so they don't just take the money, don't give you the airplane. I mean, there's a lot of things to think about. So anyway, that's kind of the primer for some of the talking points we're going to be using to make that video. But yeah, that's coming up with you guys. Mike says he qualified for a paper airplane. That's a start. It's an airplane, right? Isam said my endorsement was issued by you. Is it still good? Yeah. If I issued the endorsement, there's no expiration on our endorsement, so it's still good. With that being said, I would say please go back and study. Please do practice exam just to make sure you're ready. Just so you know, get 2 80% exams in a row on different days without a test below 80% in between, and then it means that you're ready. So somebody is asking, okay, Marty says living in Florida, one thing I did not know about was having to pay sales taxes on the purchase. Yes. One of the beauty of living in Arizona is that actually we did not pay sales taxes because there's no such thing on purchases like this. So if you buy a used car, for example, same thing. You don't need to pay sales tax. In Florida, different. Yeah, you definitely have to pay them. Also, be careful with registration. Florida does not have an aircraft registration requirement. They have a federal requirement, just like everybody else. Arizona, for example, has an Arizona registration as well. So you need to make sure you have that on there. Oh, interesting. Thunder. This is rare. We looked at each other because we don't get thunder in Arizona very often, but there's thunder going on right now outside. Which usually doesn't happen until July, so it's cool. Rain is good for us. All right, somebody's asking, how do you feel about Liberty University online flight training affiliate program? I don't know about the affiliate program. I know about Liberty University. Some of you know I've been in the university environment for a long time. That's where I started my training, and that's where I worked for a while before I did Pilot Institute. So Liberty has always been a big competitor. I remember when Liberty was a small program, they were really, really good at advertising, and they became one of the top player in the country. And so they have an online program that they use to do some of the ground training and the flight training, and they have different the one thing they did that was really smart is that they created it was like a franchise, kind of, if you think about it. So they sold the flight program, to different schools across the country that could use it, and then use it for credentialing if you want. So you might go to a school that's Liberty University, but it's not Liberty staff. It's kind of like a flight school that's using their program. So I got nothing bad to say about them. I don't know that I have anything good either because I'm not super familiar with all the content, but they've been around for a while. It's definitely one of the strong player out there. So if the school works for you, I would say go for it. Absolutely. Somebody says, hit the like button. Yep, we always like if you hit the like button. We don't live for it, but if you like what you see, that always helps us. So, okay, other question. Let me see if we have other questions on the group, the Facebook group. Damn, the thunder is going right now. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's like I said, it's always a good thing for us. Except if we have hail, then it's not a good thing because the airplane is, I think, outside. So I'm gonna go to the group right here, see if people are leaving comments. No, okay, because I don't think we're playing live. Okay, it's playing live over there. It's always interesting when you have videos live. We used to not do a whole lot of live events because they take a lot of time to prepare, and then you can't have any mess ups during the the event, but they're always fun. That doesn't seem to work without my Smurf outfit for this channel. I don't know what that means. Okay, so send more information. We were talking about today, we haven't done a FNG, the flying new guy, a video in a while, and we're going to be working on this with Jason. We've had to travel, we've had to get the airplane, we've had to do quite a few things, and we put that on hold for a bit. But if you're not familiar with the flying new guy, we're doing a ground lesson with Jason. Jason is one of our employees who's learning to be a pilot, and we kind of grill him during ground lessons. And so we have five episodes now out, and we'll have a few more in the future. Marty says, I think we have talked about this before, but have you ever considered adding some flying video content? Yes, that's coming, Marty, for sure. Like I said, the maneuvers course is coming up. The difficulty with, I'll tell you the reluctance that I've had in doing more flying content is that I don't want to be teaching you how to fly an airplane online. And there's a reason for it, is because I don't want to give you bad habits before you learn to fly. So when we create content about flying, I want to make sure that you already have a base with a flight instructor. I don't want you just using the videos to learn to fly on your own, and then you show up to a flight instructor and you said, oh, I've flown on Microsoft Flight Sim and I've flown with Greg's videos, so I know what I'm doing. And what it does is it creates habits that are hard to get rid of. So if you create a bad habit, this is called the law of primacy. If you create a bad habit, then you're going to have it forever. Funny enough, I learned to fly about 20 years ago, and I had one instructor that taught me something wrong. And I still remember it first before I correct myself and change it, because that was the first thing that I learned. So I want to make sure that when you learn to fly, you get these skills from a flight instructor, and then you go back and then you practice those skills at home. So that's what we're going to do with this maneuvers course. And we have to be smart about it. We have to be careful. And we're trying to do more than just videos. So it's going to be interactive. It's going to help you practice at home, make decisions at home. So I don't want to say too much because we're still working on it, but it's going to be really cool. And these courses take a long time to develop. And so we're taking our time. We have an animator that's going to do awesome content for it. So there's more coming up. I wanted to do it the right way and not just, put videos of us in the airplane flying, because I don't think that's enough to help teach you guys. So Ish says, do you want to add something about the new things added to the written exam? There's always kind of new things added to the written exam with the FAA. So as soon as we get notices from the FAA, we do make adjustments. The FAA doesn't make a whole lot of changes to the private pilot exam or even just airplane exams in general. It's usually just minor tweaks. So when we get the notification, we re-record videos, and we do that on a regular basis. So we'll be adding content as necessary in there. So, but great question. Keeping content updated is a task. It's difficult because The FA doesn't always share all the information. They don't always do it on a timely fashion. So, and that's true on the airplane side and on the drone side. Drone side even more so, because the drone side changes all the time. So we do have people on our team that helps with the content and creating new slides and creating new things. So, and we have obviously our team to help record and just help us keep everything updated. So yeah, it's always fun. Just got a note that says, what kind of content do you guys want to see? Let us know, if in the comments, if there's something that you're struggling with. We're coming up with a landing module because we realize that a lot of people have issues with landing, and it's the same thing as always as what I mentioned before, which is it's difficult to teach someone how to fly an airplane with just online videos. So we're working on the common errors for landing, and we're going to have really cool videos about that. Anas says, I got my private pilot license back in 1992. My knowledge is old and rusty. I signed up for the private pilot to bring my knowledge current. What is your recommendation to get back to the cockpit? That's awesome. That's a great question, Anas. I would say 1992. It's a while back. Things have changed. There's a lot of things that have changed, but primarily the technology inside of the aircraft. And when you learned to fly, you had analog instruments. There was no there was only round dial. There was no glass cockpit, which is called TAA, technically advanced aircraft. So get familiar with those things. Get familiar with the TAA, the glass cockpit, which is a different way of reading information. Get updated on GPS. So RNAV, RNAV navigation is completely different than VOR navigation. Obviously, you learn on the NDB, like I did, and that's kind of gone. VOR are still there, but they're not nearly used as much. A lot more flying from point A to point B using direct routes, which probably wasn't the case when you were flying. And so all these things, the airspace is still the same, so you can get refreshed on that. That's fairly easy. And then get back in the airplane, practicing your radio communication. That has changed a little bit. There is some changes in phraseology that have happened, like line up and wait now instead of position and hold. This is what we used to say, position and hold. Now it's line up and wait. That's just one example, but there are things that have changed. So relearn the environment. What I've found over the years, I've gone from flying a lot to not flying, to flying again, to not flying, several times in my career. And what I found every time that I go back, the actual flying of the airplane is rather easy. It's all the procedures around it that makes it a bit more difficult. Getting back on the radio, listening to the radio, and all these things you can do by sitting in the back seat of someone who's flying, or simply by watching videos online, like full flight videos. We have a few of those on our channel where you can just go back through the procedure, reading the checklist, and then you'll find that I think you'll get back into the airplane pretty easily. So, but yeah, that would be my recommendation. Airspace is mostly the same. I don't think it's changed since 1992. You just need a refresher in this case. The private pilot course is going to be perfect for you. Do the quizzes, even though you don't have to redo the written exam, but it will help you get refreshed and then basically go from here. Isam says, are you currently teaching student pilots how to fly? If yes, what's the hourly rate? I don't have time, unfortunately, for that. I have a company to run with about a dozen employees, so I don't have time to get in the airplane and teach. I wish I did. Could take one or two students because I always enjoy being in the airplane, but I don't. As far as rates, not my rate, but typically what we see between $70 an hour to $80, $85 an hour, depending on where you live for the instructor. As far as the aircraft, $150 to $200-ish an hour for the aircraft with fuel, wet. So just consider that. These are the rates that we see in different places. Now, depending on where you live, it might be more expensive, it might be cheaper. So, but that's what I would expect in this case. I think we are caught up on questions so far. What else am I going to talk about? Let me know if you have more questions. Keep asking them in here. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I tell that to students online. And if you're going through the course, if you're not going through the course, that's fine. You can still ask questions. That's what I'm here for. And just here to help you guys get to your written, and then obviously get to your check ride. We had a question recently about the check ride and how it was going to work. Actually, somebody says, "Do you have any recommendation for flight school in California?" I don't. It's tough to get recommendations to flight schools unless I've visited them and talked to the owners and talked to, seen the flight instructors. I don't. Eventually, we will have a program where we can refer to some of the best flight schools that we've dealt with out there. But at the moment, I do not. In the course, Isam, if I know you're in the course because you mentioned that, there is a section early on in the course that has a bunch of questions you should be asking of flight schools. And I recommend you go through that. These are questions that today, if I were to fly, I wish I had known back in the days when I picked my flight school, because I've gone through this. I've gone through the behind the scene of managing a flight school. And some of this is... it's important because it will help you kind of read through some of the BS, I'm going to say, and help you identify who's the good one and who's not. There was a comment earlier about some mock oral questions. Yes, mock oral questions. So your check ride is gonna start with the scenario-based training of an actual situation, okay? And the check pilot might say, okay, you're going to sit down and we're going to say, all right, you're showing up to your flight, and then you go pre-flight the aircraft, and then there's an FAA inspector on the ramp, and that FAA inspector is going to say, I'd like to see your airman certificate and all the documents needed for this flight. So what are you going to do? What are you going to show them? Are you going to show them your ID, your driver's license? Are you going to show them your logbook? Are you going to show them? So it's going to start like this. They're going to ask you questions. And then depending on how you answer, they're going to keep digging. But they're going to go through it like it's a real flight. So after they're done asking you about your documentation, they're going to say, almost guaranteed, they're going to go to the pre-flight and say, okay, you're doing your pre-flight and you realize that the landing gear isn't working, the landing light is not working correctly. What are you going to do? So now you have to go through all the paperwork and say, okay, well, I'm going to have to look at my kind of operating equipment list. I'm going to have to see if I'm operating on an MEL. I'm going to see if it's in the tomato flames thing. And so you're going to go through all these steps. Then they're going to say, okay, from here, let's look at the weight and balance. Let's say that we're going to take another friend with us. Can they come with us? Is it going to fit in the aircraft? Is the weight and balance going to be good? So it's all going to be based on actual situations that you might encounter, and they're going to want to see how you can think about the flight. They're not going to just ask you a question and say, what are the 5 documents required for this flight? They're not going to say it that way. They're just going to say, okay, we have the registration and we have our airworthiness certificate, and what else do we need? So they're going to kind of guide you through some of these questions. So you have to be ready for it. And that's what we did for that check ride course, what we just recorded, that we're going to be adding to the course. That's exactly how it's going to be. It's going to be a discussion with the check pilot. So make sure you can answer all of these questions that I've just mentioned. Somebody says, I had a difficult time learning landing, but finally soloed last month. I wish you would have launched landing course earlier. I know the landing is difficult. I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told all my students when I did landings. It's going to take a click. It's going to click in your head, and you're going to say, that was it. That was the missing element for your landing. And there's a lot of things that can go bad or good during a landing. And at one point, there's going to be that long little click. That's what was missing, and then you'll get it. What I found over time is some of the typical issues is the side loading of the aircraft. So using the rudder the wrong way during crosswind landings. So making sure that the longitudinal axis of the aircraft is lined up correctly. Making sure you understand the throttle versus the pitch of the aircraft. So throttle is going to control your descent rate, while the pitch of the aircraft is going to control the airspeed of the aircraft. So using the trim is going to be important in that case during landing. Airspeed is super important when it comes to your landing, having the right airspeed, not too fast, not too slow. And then looking ahead, looking far on the horizon is also going to be key instead of looking right in front of the nose of the aircraft. So it's extremely important that you understand all of these different things. Obviously, the crosswind, the base leg at the right altitude, the turn to final at the right altitude, all of these things are going to be important. The leading up to the landing is as important as the landing in itself. Understanding the ground effect as well is also going to be important. So all these things you have to kind of put into perspective. And I'm going to need power for my laptop, by the way, because I'm getting low. I saw a good question here. Where is it? Do you have any financial advice for student pilots? Yes. Financial advice for student pilots. I would say realize that the more time you spend on the ground before you flight is going to save you a ton of money down the road. Okay? Why am I saying this? When I was a student pilot, what I did is I observed my roommates' flights. So we would split the time. He would go fly, I would sit in the back, and I would observe everything that he did. And we did long cross countries that way. He would fly one leg of the cross country, and I would fly the other leg. But sitting in the back of it, I wouldn't just sit there. I would actually do the whole flight as if I were, flying the aircraft. I would look at his altitude and I would say, why is he 100 feet off or 200 feet off? And sure enough, when I get to the front, I would do exactly the same thing. But my point is, I'd spend the time studying before my flight. I would go and do the flight. I knew what I was going to do during my own lesson. And I was ready for them. I reviewed my procedures. I listened to my radio. I would go to the airport and just sit there and listen to the radio and hear what they were saying. I would sit, like I said, in the back of the airplane and do as many observation flights as I could. And then I would practice at home. This is going to sound funny, but when you sit on the crapper, you close your eyes and you practice your procedures. How do you do slow flight? Okay, close your eyes. You're going to reduce power. You're going to start to pull back, and then make sure you have your flaps, blah, blah, blah. You have your whole procedure in your head. So the day that you show up, and if you're able to speak it while you do it, it's even better. So you have your whole procedure. You're explaining what you're doing, and those things are as important as the actual flight itself. And that's going to save you a ton of money. So I don't know if that's the kind of financial advice you're looking for, but that's what I would say. Another thing that you can do is potentially buy your own airplane and then sell it when you're done. Now, that can be tricky right now because airplane prices are really high. So it may not make as much sense as it did, 2 or 3 years ago before the pandemic. But aircraft are expensive right now, probably overinflated as far as cost. So I cannot guarantee that when you're done, you would sell it for a surplus. But still, the cost of owning the airplane, typically, if you're going to be flying quite a bit, is going to be less than the renting of the aircraft. It's not always true, so take that with a grain of salt, do some research. But in some areas of the country, it's a possibility. In some flight schools, you can also lease that airplane back to the flight school and then make some money off of it. So I've leased back airplanes myself from other people at the flight schools that I've managed so that we didn't have to buy the airplane. So if the leaseback agreement is the right one, then the flight school wins. You win because they pay you for all the hours that are getting flown on the aircraft, and then you get access to that aircraft to fly it as well, and then pays for potentially some of your flight training, and then that aircraft might be paid for eventually. Then you have your own aircraft. So those are things to keep in mind. Isam says, I did all the questions you've mentioned, but unfortunately 2 of my CFI I've flown with moved to the airlines. Yep, it wasn't easy to go with another CFI and get used to their teaching style. Yeah, that's an unfortunate thing that's going on right now with airlines hiring so much. You don't get to keep flight instructors, and they're gone before they can give you the entire education. So I feel you. I don't really have much of anything to say about how to fix that. It's a difficult situation. Marty says, I was looking at the site for some of the new courses. I noticed that my Part 107 only shows 69% complete and my PPL shows 99%. I think, Marty, we may have added content since you've been in there. That's why the percentage went down. He said it's called chair flying and it's a great way to practice. Yes, it absolutely is. We're actually working on some awesome content. If you were at Sun and Fun, you may have seen the booth that we had set up with virtual reality goggles, and we're creating more content for that. But you'll have the ability to be doing an immersive pre-flight from inside your house without having to go to the airport. So that's I'm excited. I'm really excited about that part. Any tips on lining up with a field during simulated engine failures? Additionally, how can I make my instrument scan quicker so I don't have to become fixated on one or two things? I'll answer the second question first. How do you make your instrument scan quicker? I think that's going to come with experience. You can learn to quickly see the information and analyze it. You have to understand what information you're getting out of each instrument. Now, I don't know if you're flying on a round dial or if you're using the TAA, but depending on how you look at your scan, you'll quickly learn to just get that one bit of information and look to the next instrument and look to the next instrument. Typically, when you become fixated is because you're not fast enough at reading the information. Think about it as learning to read, and then you look at a word and you have to read the full word to understand it. Eventually, you quickly scan it, you know what the word that is, and then you understand what it says. So I think it will come with more experience. Now, as far as lining up with a field during simulated engine failure, it's going to be the same as with landing. Don't look just at the beginning of the field. Start to also look further down the road or down whatever field you're using. And then you'll see the aircraft movement in relationship to the end of the fake runway. And then you'll be able to figure out if you're aligned or not. Typically, most people, when they look really close to the beginning of the runway, they don't have that depth of field, that ability to see if the aircraft is moving one way or another. Think about it the same way as when you take off, and to make sure that you're keeping the center line as soon as you take off, you're going to look far in the distance for an object to make sure you're not drifting. And so that's going to be the same in this case. Let's see. Do you have any tip for a smooth transition from one CFI to another? It's a good question. I would say it would be more for the CFI that I have a tip, which would be make sure that you know where your student is at as far as skills. So I think your first flight with that CFI should be kind of like a progress check. They should be checking on key things. Can you hold your altitude? Can you do a pattern without assistance? Can you do slow flights, steep turns, all these basic things? Then you have a better idea of where you need to go. Now, sadly, every time you transition to a new CFI, they're going to have you redo things that you've done before. It's up to you as a student to show them how good you are so that they can move on to the next thing. So I would say for you as a tip, I think who's asking that question, Ish, I would say for you as a tip, make sure that you're as ready as you can be. Think about this as your check ride, so you can go to that lesson and show the instructor that you know your stuff, and that way they can move on to the next level. Also, if you have, depending if it's within the same flight school, depending on how much record you have of what you've done, make sure you bring those records and say, hey, I've worked on this with my CFI. I worked on this. That way you can bring the CFI up to date. In most flight schools, there is a flight record somewhere in the system, depending on what software you use. And then you should be able to tell them, hey, this is everything I've done. But it's not an easy task, because think about that CFI. They have to be comfortable that up to that point, you've checked all the boxes. So they do have to verify somewhere. Somebody said you just covered the leaseback option. In your opinion, what is the best aircraft to pursue to do that? Vans, old Cessna, some of the cool new aircraft that are showing at Sun and Fun. Great question, Jeff. As far as leaseback, I'm going to start with the cool new airplane that you're showing at Sun and Fun. So if I'm a flight school owner and I'm looking for a leaseback aircraft, I'm going to look for an aircraft that I have already in the fleet. I'm going to add another type of aircraft that I already have in the fleet. Why? Because that's going to be the one that most people are going to fly. If you go with a 172 glass cockpit and there's already 5 other 172 glass cockpit in the fleet, then it's perfect because it's just one more of that same exact aircraft that when the 5 others are full, I can put somebody else in there. Now, if you bring in a obscure aircraft that you don't have another one of in the fleet, the people that are going to be checked out in that airplane, there's only going to be one of, which means that when that airplane goes down for maintenance, they know they don't have access to another airplane. So they might be more reluctant to go and fly in that. So I would say go with the more popular airplane that's in that fleet and then get another one of those, because then you know it's going to fly. So the most popular aircraft out there is the 172. If you can find one that's cheap enough, or if you're willing to invest, then that's the aircraft you should go for. If the flight school is flying Piper Warriors, then you go with a Piper Warrior, and then you look for the same type in that fleet. Or you go to that flight school and say, is there an aircraft that you're missing in your fleet that you would like to have? Maybe they have Cessna 172 round dial and they want to add a Cessna 172 G1000. Then that's the one you go to because it's going to be a popular aircraft because it's the next step up. So there's a lot of options in here, but I would not recommend going for some obscure, even really cool aircraft just because there might be a chance that people are not interested because there's only one of those in the fleet. Next one. I've been starting my flight school with glass cockpit. Would you say I should have started with traditional instead? Ooh, great question. So my preference would be this. And remember, I'm a bit old school, but I would prefer to start a private pilot in a round dial situation, traditional cockpits, and then move them over to, even if it's after a few lessons, move them over to a glass cockpit. There have been studies that show that moving from glass cockpit back down to round dial is more difficult, way more difficult than the other way around. When I managed a school in Florida, we bought glass cockpit aircraft, but we kept the older ones as a private pilot trainer because we found that students that learn in the traditional glass cockpit, in a traditional round dial, did really good with their skills, and then we moved them over to glass cockpit, and it was an somewhat easy transition for them. The other way around was pretty difficult. So if you have started already, don't feel bad. Okay, there's a lot of students now that start with glass cockpit training, and that's all they see for a long time. It all depends on what you want to do. If you want to go to the airlines, chances are you'll be fine. If you want to rent aircraft in the future, I would say try to mix in a couple flights now with your instructor in the round dial, just so you can get accustomed to it before. I'm not going to say before it's too late because that's not the right word, but before you get any further in there. It's good for training. It's good cross-reference. It might cost you a little bit more in training, but I think down the road it's actually going to be a good thing. So there's not a right or wrong answer here. Round dial aircraft are going to be here for a while. And if you're going to be renting, you may not find a G1000 aircraft anywhere. So I'm kind of glad personally that I did my training in there. And then at the very end of my training, when I became a flight instructor, that's when we started to see a glass cockpit. And then I was able to transition to that. Any idea about including content that integrates with Microsoft Flight Sim or X-Plane? Yes. So the difficulty with Microsoft Flight Sim or even X-Plane to create content that transfers directly into that is that there's a lot of coding involved and they haven't made this very easy. But with that being said, we're going to have content that you can learn with us and then go and practice in the Flight Sim after you have done that with your instructor. I'm going to repeat what I said earlier, which is I don't want to teach you how to fly an airplane without an actual instructor first. The content that we are creating is going to be a home companion, if you want to think about it this way. It's going to be something that you go and practice with your instructor. Then you're going to go home and we're going to help you practice what you learned with your instructor back at home. And again, the flight instructor is going to do the majority of the job first, and then we'll be there to help you after that. Thank you for the advice. Please, one more time. Don't be that guy. That's right. Don't be that guy. That's my favorite saying that we say in the airplane world. But you know what? In the drone world, but it actually applies to the airplane world. Trevor, Jacob. Any tips on entering the field of aviation as a female? I feel like it's been predominantly male, yes. Just look at the chat, and I'm worried about potential paternalism when I start my training. I'm gonna say I wouldn't be worried about this, and I know it's easy for me to say. I'm a guy, and I went through this as a guy, obviously, but I think today versus 20 years ago, you will see a lot more female in aviation than ever. And so I think this is a great time in order to do this. I've had plenty of female friends in college that were amazing pilots that were able to get amazing jobs in aviation. So I wouldn't be worried. I don't think I've ever heard any of them say that they had less opportunity available. As a matter of fact, I would say because so many places now are trying to bring the number of female pilots up, it actually is quite a bit of an advantage to be a female in aviation, because you might have access to grants and things that other people may not have access to. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. Yes, you will be evolving around a lot of guys, and that's just the way it is. But most female pilots that I've been around can give it back if they get in front of someone who's a little bit too macho. So I think you'll learn that. I think it will build character. So yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about it. I think you'll do great. Yeah, Ashley is one of our students. She was in Arizona. She was one of my students at the flight school at the university here in Arizona, and she moved on to fly in Alaska. She's a flight instructor now in Alaska, and we bring her to every trade show that we can because she's got a great personality, and she can argue and beat up some of the guys in our team. So she's a great asset. Can I get a job as a pilot with a misdemeanor? So the FAA is not a big fan of DUIs. Okay. DUIs, yeah, something that the FAA is going to look at, and the FAA not only the FAA, let's put it this way. Don't get DUIs after you get your pilot license. That's pretty frowned upon. The airlines are not going to be happy with DUIs. So it will definitely put you lower on the priority list. If they really, really, really have a need, then they will call you. But I don't know what kind of misdemeanor, and you don't have to tell me in the chat, but I'll tell you that DUIs are a big no-no in this world. So don't drink and drive. That's the one thing that we're always taught in college is if you're going to go somewhere, you bring a DD or you get a cab or an Uber now, but make sure that you don't drink and drive. That will ruin your career. 26 watching, only 8 thumbs up. Yes, please like, but I will continue doing this regardless of how many thumbs up we get. I know you guys appreciate them, so that's all I care. In a recent study group on Wednesday, and I think about 25% are female. That's awesome, Marty. I work for United on the ramp and recently got a lot more female in the right and left seat. Go for it. Yes, that's awesome. Love all these comments. Thanks, guys, for leaving those in here. Do you know where I can find these grants for my flight school? So grants are difficult to find. AOPA does a pretty good job. AOPA has a website. That's the Aircraft Owner Pilot Association. They do a great job at grouping them. Now, know that in the US, there is a lot of grants that go unclaimed because people cannot find them. So if you find one, even if you think you're not going to get it, just do the paperwork. It might take you an hour or two to do it. Just do it because you never know. Because so few people apply for them, you might actually end up getting it. So most of those grants, I have to say, knowing this from experience, because I was not a U.S. citizen when I came to the U.S., I am now, but most of these only apply to U.S. citizens, so you have to be careful. The LA Enthusiast, La Enthusiast, I think is how you pronounce that. As a female, I would look at Women in Aviation. They have grants as well that they have on their website, and so make sure you apply for those as well. Do you, let's see what's next. My CFI says I'm ready to solo, but how does one get over fear and anxiety of emergencies in the air and unusual radio calls during your first solo? I would not worry about this. I know it's easy to say, right? I wouldn't worry about it because radio communication, let's talk about the fears that you have. Radio communication, unusual radio communication. If you don't understand, all you have to say is, I'm a student pilot on my first solo, and the controller will be there to help you, okay? Everybody knows what the first solo is all about. First solo is about doing you couple landings and then coming back and doing this. As far as emergencies happen. By the time you're ready to do your first solo, if your instructor says you're ready to go, it means that you're ready to go. So trust your instructor. I remember my first solo, my instructor said, I will not tell you when your first solo is going to be. You're going to show up at the airport one day and I'm going to say, today's your first solo, because he didn't want me stressing out about it ahead of time. So hopefully more instructors do the same thing. And then, you're going to get there. You'll do great. Don't overthink it. It's just flying around the pattern. If you haven't had an emergency until now, chances are you're going to be pretty good at doing this. So you'll be fine. Okay. Yassine says it's a white collar crime, first time offense. I don't think I would be too worried about that. Like I said, DUIs is what you don't want to do. Okay. We're getting pretty close. We got 10 minutes left. So if you have more questions, put them in here. I think we've answered quite a few. This was awesome. This was a great thing. We will be doing this every 2 weeks. So mark your calendars. We have a few of them, I think, in the queue already on YouTube. You can click on there. It will remind you. We'll send you a message as well. I think if you are in the student group, you will also see the events in the student group. So we'll keep reminding you. But yeah, every 2 weeks we'll be doing these just so you can, ask your questions so I can answer them. And I love this. Actually, I like answering questions. This makes it easier than me answering the comments in the course. Or Tom also answers. Tom is our CFI on staff, also answers some of the questions in the group. So Kim says thanks for the encouragement and tips. You're very welcome. I'm excited for all you guys because you're about to get either first solo or you're about to get your private pilot license or even your instrument rating. I remember those days. This was it's always fun. It's stressful. It's a lot of work, but man, at the end of the day, the day that you can take that aircraft on your own to go fly from point A to point B on that cross country, that's the best feeling in the world. You've put all that work in, and then now you can take your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your parents, your significant other, whatever it is. It's such a great feeling. So how do I join the student group? You can go on Facebook and you can look at Pilot Institute Airplane Group, I think it's called. Let me make sure. We have so many groups. Yeah, Pilot Institute Airplane Student Group. Then we'll let you in if you, hopefully you're a student. We do require being one of our students to do this, but then we'll let you in. Marty says, it was great to meet you finally last month. Same here. It's funny when there are some names that I see on YouTube, some names that I see in the comments that I see over and over again. And when people come to me and shake my hand, I say, oh, I know exactly who you are. So it's pretty cool. Caleb says, what sparked your interest in aviation? That's a great question. I started this very young. I had an uncle that was, you guys know, I grew up in France, and my uncle was American. He had married one of my aunts who was French, and she had moved when she was 17, married him, and he was an airline pilot for Northwest, and so flying 747s. And I always remember hearing about Uncle Alan, who was pilot in the US. And I always said, I want to be like Uncle Alan. I want to be an airline pilot and live in the US. So I've done most of those except being an airline pilot. It's a long story because of 9/11 and when I did my training. But I'm glad. He was absolutely 100% my inspiration. And my parents always say you have to be good at math if you want to do that. So I studied my butt off and made it all the way to Florida to do my training and become a pilot. And I even got to fly with him after I got my private. So that was one of my pride and joy. He passed away, unfortunately, in 2009, before he could see what I did with Pilot Institute. But I think about him a lot. I still have my logbook. I have a note from him in the first page of my logbook, and he told me, he said, make sure I need to take a picture of it one day and post it in the group, because it was his tip, the one tip that he gave me as a pilot. He said, make sure you know about the weather before you take off. And he underlined before. Make sure you know everything about the weather and the airport and everything before you take off. I'm sure from experience that he's had of his career. So I hold him dearly, and he's helped me, through all my training. And I probably wouldn't be here. I know I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him. So maybe you already answered this. I couldn't listen to the whole thing. I got my PPL in March. How often should I fly to stay proficient? Ooh, that's a tough one. To stay proficient, everybody's different. I'm going to say it this way first. Everybody's different, but I would say try to fly at least once a month at the very least. But I would say try to do more than that if you can. And that's difficult because because I know sometimes life happens. You get your license, and then life happens. You get kids, you get a family, you get whatever it is, and you can't fly for a month, a year, 10 years sometimes. But try to stay on top of it. So yeah, it's difficult to give you an exact number. Okay, does rental aircraft include rental insurance for their aircraft? Ooh, that is a great question. Should I have flight and aircraft insurance prior to renting? So, amazing question. Most rental places, all rental places, when they rent you the aircraft, they have aircraft insurance attached to it. With that being said, it covers you. They have a minimum amount that you're going to have to pay in case you break the aircraft. Okay, that's the deductible. And it's just like for your car, you may have a $500 deductible, you may have a $1,000 deductible. When we rented aircraft here in Arizona at Lenore Aircraft in Prescott, their deductible is $2,500. So if we break something on the aircraft and there's an insurance claim, that we would have to pay $2,500 out of pocket as part of the insurance for the insurance to cover. Now, with that being said, be careful, because there is what's called a subrogation clause, which means that it doesn't necessarily protect you 100%. And what it means is that the insurance company can still come after you if you did something and try to get that money back for what they paid in claims. So because you're the renter doesn't mean you're always 100% covered. You might be covered, but they might also try to come back and get you. So if you're a renter, I would recommend that you get renter insurance as well. These policies are pretty cheap, especially if you're going to rent quite a bit. I would say get a renter's insurance in addition to the insurance that is covered in here. So I think Jeff asked that. Jeffrey Bogue, thank you for asking that question, because that's something that people can get in trouble with. And then he says, if the pilot renting an aircraft is required to have insurance prior to the rental, do you have any preference on insurance companies? I would say type renter's insurance. There's a bunch of them out there. We are with Global Aerospace. That's one of the bigger one that I've dealt with for years and years. So look at Global Aerospace, but they're not the only one. So look for aircraft renters insurance, and that will help you. We have a few more minutes here, and then we're going to stop, and then we'll come back to that in 2 weeks. I was told by my CFI you may use a tablet or a phone in airplane mode as the calculator. Have you heard of this? In the airplane, yes, you can, but not during the test. If you're asking, I don't know. Oh, on the written exam. No. You cannot take a tablet or a phone. As a matter of fact, some testing centers don't even allow you to have long sleeve shirts because they don't want you putting stuff inside of your sleeve. So no, you cannot take a tablet or a phone during the written exam. Is VR a good idea for flight simulator? Also, I'm going to be helping out at AirVenture. Yes, VR, absolutely. If you have a VR setup for Microsoft Flight Sim, it's really, really cool and very immersive. So yes, if you have the setup, I would say it works really well. And if you're at AirVenture, come see us. We have a booth. We're right at the entrance. We're gonna have a big space with a big pink tent. You can't really miss it. Is it true that aircraft structure are inspired by sharks? I have not heard that to decrease drag. Possible. I've never heard that one, but I'm still learning every day. So CX3 is a cheaper option than a physical calculator for one reason. Yes, the CX3 is allowed during the written exam, so I would use that. We have in the course, we have a full tutorial on the CX3, so make sure that you use that. All right, folks, we're getting on the hour. I'm going to have to wrap it up so I can get home. But thanks for watching, and we will be doing this again in 2 weeks. So put that in your calendar and come back again, ask whatever questions you have. And thanks for watching this time. I'm going to have to give you my brief. If you're not subscribed on YouTube, please subscribe. We almost have 10,000 followers. We're putting out more content every single day, and we do this for you guys. And yeah, we'll be in touch very soon. Thanks for watching.